Yay. So some of these I have been forgetting to hit record, and some of these I haven't. So with
Already.
yours, we're good. And so I want to welcome my next guest here to talk about all things Broncos. I will be honest and say I don't know David from the Broncos. I actually known him for our common football team.
Yes.
But I'm super excited that you started another channel. We can talk about other things, talk about NFL, because you know me, like I'm an NFL girl. I love this. So thanks for coming on and chatting with me about the Broncos, because I think you all are one of those people also that's in an interesting position with a freshman, a rookie quarterback, different moving parts, Hall of Fame coach, depending on who you ask. So super excited to have this conversation. So thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
I would love you introduce yourself, tell us as much or as little as you want. And then what made you a fan? How long have you been a Broncos fan? What do you love about the Broncos? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Perfect. Yes. Well, again, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Really flawed. Yeah, I guess I can say I got two different channels like you alluded to on YouTube. My first one I started last year was David Talks Buffs. And that one just kind of took off. Being a CU grad, I got my MBA from CU, live out here in the Denver area, and that just kind of took off. And it's at a really great spot right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always been in the back of my mind. I need to start this Broncos channel. I've been, out of all my teams I followed, the Broncos are like my ride and die team. So out of the womb was bleeding orange and blue. All of that when YouTube, before it had been acquired by Google, I had a small little YouTube video or YouTube channel that I started for Broncos stuff.
Oh,
When I
cool.
was like 15, and I did that for a year, but it was the first year that Josh McDaniels took over, and it just kind of it took all the fun out of it. And yeah, so I did it for that season. I don't even think I did like an end of year recap because I was like a 15-year-old so down bad after starting 6-0 and then missing the playoffs. And I'd always wondered, there have been some people that I followed around that time that got on YouTube, and they have 500,000 subscribers now. It had always been in the back of my mind, what if I had just stuck with it? And
Your
so here I am
15-year-old self.
now. Yeah. Yeah, now living my childhood dreams again 15 years later, starting David Talks Broncos. So that's where I'm at now. I'm just a guy who likes talking football and gives you a fan perspective. I don't try or claim to be an expert on any sort of part of football, but I will say I've watched a hell of a lot of football throughout my life. So I have somewhat of a decent idea of I think what it takes for teams to become successful or players to become good or whatnot. So that's what I like about talking with football with you, really flawed, is that you've watched a lot of football as well, and you kind of have an idea of what it takes for these teams to get good.
Yeah, that's what I always say. I'm always like, I'm not an X's and O's girl. Don't come to me for X's and O's. Don't come to me for technique. However, come to me if you're like, do I think he's going to fit? Is he going to be a good person? Does this look good? Because I can tell you yes or no. Like that's now I can't tell you if it's because his first foot is fast or his second step is wide or what. I can't. I'm not in the business of that. But I can tell you, this isn't going to work. And here's why. So I appreciate that about us. And I think that sometimes like people don't know their lane. Like they think they have to be everything that involves sports. And it's like, you don't. There's so many different ways that you can be a fan. And there's not a wrong or right way. Just watch, and all of that knowledge, you don't know you have the knowledge until somebody starts talking to you and you're like, oh, right. Week 2, second quarter. I remember that, so it's interesting. So I do want to say, I just had a thought. As of this recording, the schedule released last night. So we have the NFL schedule. Second thing that's happened is Colorado has a college, an athlete on the cover of EA Sport College Football Game, and my Longhorns, your second team, Hook'em, has a player on the cover. So I feel like we're basically winning on all sides of this. What do you think about that?
Man, I think it's beautiful. I love that Quinn Ewers is on the cover. Arch Manning, you signing away your rights to be in the video game has nothing to do with how you spend your time. Come on, man. Like, in the game, we all want to see it. And
Yeah.
I love that Travis Hunter's on the cover. I think he's absolutely deserving. And I think we got a lot to bond over with our college football interests as well
Mhm.
as, am I talking a little bit of crap, I guess? But you might go through some of the quarterback suffering with Russell Wilson this year, like we have been through, and I think we're gonna bond over a lot of
Yeah.
experiences this year.
Yeah, and listen, after being a fan is like this. It's like a roller coaster ride. I've told everybody all I want this season is a couple of weekends, if not multiple weekends, where Texas wins, Colorado wins, and the Steelers win. Like that's all a woman is asking for. And then I see the schedule and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what? Like, so anyways, that's a different conversation for a different day. So I just wanted to give our shout out and kudos to Quinn Ewers and Travis Hunter because they earn it. And you know what? And forget the Michigan person. And if you're a Michigan fan, you know my heart. I can't. I have a blue, but like I can't. Like I'll leave them where they're at until after we beat them, and then I'll jump back on the bandwagon.
Oh, do
for Michigan? Yeah, we play them week 2.
Okay.
Yeah, at the big house. So we play Colorado State first, which is funny because then the Colorado will play them. And then we play Michigan at the big house week 2. So until after that game, I will not say anything positive about Michigan because that's not how I roll.
Let's go.
So yeah.
Y'all handle them.
Yeah, we should. We should. I mean, and if we don't, then it's going to be a longer season than we thought. But but like I've always said, and then I'll get off Texas. We do this weird thing where it's like we look unbeatable, everything's working, everything's moving, and then one game you're just like, what? Okay, that was weird. Like we don't have a running game anymore. Okay, but we have the best offensive line in college football, but now we don't know how to run the ball anymore. Okay, this is interesting. So. But that's why we're fans, right? That's why we watch. So tell me how you all have done free agency. So I know there was a lot of moving parts. Obviously, one of them was Russell Wilson. But how else did you all do in free agency? Like, how did you feel during free agency?
Oh man. Well, this is an interesting one because I think after the year that we had, I got to be honest, I was expecting us to win like maybe 5 or 6 games. So I feel like we kind of overachieved 8 wins, 8 and 9. And again, the season was going okay. Russell was playing pretty decent football at some certain points. It was kind of similar to Tim Tebow when he was here, where like it would just look ugly for 3 quarters. The offense could not get it going. And then we pull off like an awesome 4th quarter performance. We get a win. We had like a 5-6 game winning streak, which was awesome. But things really started to fall off the rails later in the year. I think it was a Christmas Eve Sunday night football game, if I remember correctly, where we're at home, wild card spots on the line. And Russell Wilson gets outperformed at home against Bailey Zappi. And
it wasn't great.
when that happens, and that was the infamous Sean Payton yelling at Russell Wilson because he ran a play too early before Sean Payton could challenge the call and all this. And Sean Payton yelled at Russell Wilson. So we kind of knew from that moment moving forward that things were probably going to go in a different direction with the quarterback position.
Okay.
And a lot of us, including myself, has wondered and kind of feared, are we just going to take the Saints approach with how Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton had worked the cap so often, which is just pushing the dead money down, racking up that credit bill. And it's been nice to see. I think Sean Payton's going to take a slightly different approach with this team. Also because we don't have a Hall of Fame quarterback on the team right now. So it's not worth doing that. So we had some different ways where we could cut Russ and structure the cap hit, the dead money for this year and next year. Could have been $34 million this year and then 50 the next, or we could do like a 53 this year and 30 something the following year. They decided to take the bulk of the dead money hit this year, $53 million. I think, if not the
Golly.
largest dead money hit in NFL history, it's one of the largest ones. So I wasn't expecting a big flashy free agent signing period, anything like that. But I do like a lot of the signings that we've had. They've been a
Good.
little bit under the radar. So our run defense was absolutely horrible last year. So we really needed to upgrade the trenches. We signed Malcolm Roach from New Orleans, who was one of the best run stoppers in the league. He
That will
played in a
help.
part-time role for them last year, and I think if he's not starting, he's going to get significantly more snaps. I think he's only 25 years old, so about to go into
He's
his prime.
only 25?
I think so.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but I have his page up really quick. He is, 25 years old.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, still has a long way to go in
Yeah.
his career. We also traded with the Jets because I guess they made some signings where they signed some guys, but then they needed to let some guys go for really cheap
Yeah.
because they needed to get under the cap. So we got a starting defensive lineman from them, John Franklin Myers, for a future 6th round draft pick in 2026. This is a guy that pissed off Jets fans, the fact that they gave him away for pretty much free. And he restructured his contract to be here. So he took
Oh.
less money. He
Okay.
just wanted to get out of New York, I guess. So
Yeah.
we,
It could be brutal.
yes.
Yeah.
So this is something where, again, it's not going to get headlines. People on ESPN or Fox Sports aren't going to be talking about it, but we're at the position to where our defensive line has a lot more quality to it than it had last year. Probably the biggest notable loss is cutting Justin Simmons. You've seen that a ton of Pro Bowl, all pro safeties are still on the market right now.
Which is kind of shocking to me.
Yeah. I guess they're just not worth it when I don't understand it.
When what? Yeah, it's been shocking to me that they're still on the market.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to do with more of like, from what I hear, again, I'm not this film junkie, although I try and watch film when I can, but from what I hear, it's like more coverages being ran are more so like cover 3 or cover 4, where you're having these kind of shells up top, right? So maybe you don't need the most athletic safety back there, right?
So are we seeing the changing of the guard then with safeties?
I think so. I think that's why you've kind of started to see them treated, sadly, a little bit more like running back, where it's like if and maybe that's why cornerback has become so much more of an important position. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, but it just seems like throughout the league, they're no longer wanting to pay guys $15-20 million to play that position anymore.
Except for, didn't somebody just get paid? Tampa Bay guy?
He did.
I feel like they just
Antoine Winfield.
What it seems like is happening, and again, I'm throwing this out in the atmosphere because this is what I think we're seeing, is every team probably has one solid safety that they are like, we're willing to pay the one guy, we're not willing to pay the second guy. And that's what seems like the theme is like, give us the one and we can make up the other one. Yes. But the one has to be stellar.
Yes. Yeah. And it's been interesting to see what we've done at the safety position because, again, we cut Justin Simmons, saved like $11 million doing that. Longhorns, we got a ton of Longhorns on the team. As you know, Malcolm Roach was a Longhorn. Our two of our best
I didn't
safeties,
say Hookem. I forgot to say Hookem. Sorry.
Yes, Hookem. PJ Locke, as well as Caden Stearns, they're going to be back. PJ Locke just signed a new contract. I think he's going to be a starting safety. And then we signed Brandon Jones from the Miami Dolphins, who I think is 25 years as well. So there's been a focus on getting younger, signing guys who are for this next contract are going to be going into their prime or playing into their prime rather than signing guys who are 30 plus years old. So it's been nice to see the team get younger. I feel like we've been one of the older teams in football for quite a while, and we haven't been making the playoffs with paying all those veterans. So one thing that I appreciate about Sean Payton is that it seems like he has a really strong idea of his positional spending philosophy. Like he
Okay.
only wants to devote a certain amount of cap percentage towards certain positions,
Good.
and I think that that's always advantageous for the long term, because you don't want to be like what the Bengals are in right now.
Or the
Yeah,
Bills, because they
yes,
started to overspend and they, found themselves in a weird position too.
yes. Or as we've seen with the Cowboys or Titans, some of these other teams, like they fall in love with these running backs
Hmm.
that they've drafted, and they give them these contracts that honestly, even if you want them on the team for another 3 years and they play a big role on the offense or whatever, it's never worth it in terms of how it
Nope.
makes you take away from the rest of the team talent wise. And I think Sean Payton's got a good idea of how he wants to spend money, and that's something we've kind of been directionless for a very long time
Okay.
with I don't know if you know this, but the Broncos ownership, like after the 2015 season, or maybe right around then, it started to be run by a trust because Pat Bowlen had Alzheimer's and all this before he
Oh
passed
yeah,
away.
I feel like I heard you
Yeah.
either tell me the story or I've watched a video or something where you might have
Yeah,
mentioned it.
so
It
it
sounds
was just a
familiar.
mess. You had a guy who was the president of the team, a part of this trust, then making decisions on when to hand over the team to the children. That was never going to happen because it's a huge conflict of interest. He's basically
Yeah.
firing himself. And we opposite of the Steelers, we just haven't had any continuity or commitment to a specific direction. It's always just kind of been changing from year to year. So I think now going into year two with Sean Payton, I think having some more of that continuity, having everybody on the same page, having now ownership that is completely on board
Yeah.
with what he wants to do, and not they're not pinching pennies anywhere. They're spending a ton of money on the team and around the team. I think that things are looking pretty good. But that's a long-winded way of me saying I think the strategy was to make kind of under the radar
Yeah.
bargain basement signings. We didn't spend a ton of money in free agency, but we are on track next year to have over $100 million available to spend in free agency. Um, and part of that will have to do with locking up our all pro guard, Quinn Miners, as well as Patrick Surtain Jr.
Uh, I love, so one of the things I've loved doing this so far, because I'm nearing kind of the tail end of it,
Mhm.
is how many times and how many conversations I've gotten to have with like people about their offensive line.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like, as a football fan, I feel like there's certain levels of being a fan. And the first real level is like just understanding football first downs and things like that, which is fine. The second level is you like flash. So you like the receivers, you like the safeties, you like the corners, you like the quarterback. And then there's that level where it's like you're talking about offensive linemen. You're thinking about the right side versus the left side. And is the center even good? And because to me, that's football. Obviously, AFC North football. Like if your offensive
Mhm.
line is terrible, you basically suck. And so I love that football talk. It's like, let's talk about the meat and potatoes. Like, let's like, you want to pass the ball? Let's see if you're even going to have time to pass the ball.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah, the offensive line was it was really interesting because it hasn't been the greatest over the last 5-6 years. But Garrett Bowles, who was absolutely garbage his first couple of years, he's turned into a pretty decent left
good for
tackle,
him.
like a good left tackle. I wouldn't say he's elite, but I think he's above average.
Good for him.
We've drafted Quinn Miners, who I feel like I think he was all pro last year or second team all pro. He
Okay.
has been fantastic. Last year, we signed Mike McGlinchey. We've always had this hole at right tackle. Very rarely do teams ever feel like they're good at right tackle, right? But while Mike McGlinchey is helpful in the run game, he's definitely a liability with the pass blocking, as probably most right tackles are.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, I feel like in terms of how they were rated and graded, their run block and pass block win rate, Broncos ranked, top 10 in terms of
Oh,
their line performance last year. The
that's
biggest
good.
issue, and again, if you watched a lot of Broncos football, you would see a lot of the sacks and pressures. I think Russell Wilson was, I was
He
looking
spun
here
into
before we
them a
got him.
lot. Yeah,
Yes,
he
he was
turned the
responsible
wrong
for
way.
25% of the team's pressures. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. It just
I
something
yeah,
about it just didn't fit. Like it was
no,
like it's like I always say, and you've probably heard me say this 1,000 times. We always look at stats and numbers and information, and on paper it looks perfect. It's
yep,
supposed to fit because this, and that. And then you come together and it's not it. Like
no.
it just didn't work. Like it just didn't work.
Big arm, about the same size, maybe a little bit shorter as Drew Brees, but I think like when you look back at Russell, the other quarterbacks that we've had recently, look at Drew Lock, he's another guy who they just had trouble getting rid of the ball on time
Mhm.
and quick.
Mhm.
So it's been a long time since I feel like we've been able to have a quarterback in here that where their strengths, uh, they're kind of geared more towards hitting slants over the middle of the field,
Yeah.
hitting those crossers, being able to read all parts of the
Oh
field.
gosh.
And
When
yes,
can I just say when you say crossing routes and slants, I get triggered. So I'm sorry. Like when I heard you say that, I was like, oh God, don't
yeah,
don't use those swear words, Dave.
I know, and it's simple stuff. It's simple stuff, but yeah, we haven't been able to execute it here. And oh, I did mean to say this. I'm so happy Jerry Judy's out of here, and I needed to hit
Really?
on this because this dude, I feel like he's got all the talent in the world, and it would not surprise me if he lives up closer to his potential in Cleveland. I think it was best for him to move on.
Okay.
I think it was in the Broncos' interest to not bring him back because this was a guy that, I mean, you probably saw some of the
Antics.
instances with like Steve Smith with him like going at him. Like he was doing that every week on Twitter with fans and media members. And
Really?
yes, and he was a constant distraction to where the man was just on Twitter too much. And when you're dropping balls or, you're not 1,000-yard receiver, you're kind of bringing more and more distraction on the team with how you're handling yourself off of the field. It He just wasn't worth it. He
Yeah.
became a little bit of a distraction, and I think it was best, like I said, for him to move on, as well as the Broncos eliminate some of those personalities that not
Sometimes
necessarily
it
were
just
like
doesn't
all about the
work.
team, right?
Yeah,
It
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 just doesn't
just didn't
work.
work, and
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
nice going
listen,
into this year. We
he's
got
perfect for the
guys.
Browns.
Say what?
He's perfect for the
Yes,
Browns.
he's perfect for the Browns.
He's,
They'll get along with Deshaun Watson, great, and all that.
he'll get along with Miles Garrett. Like they're perfect for each other.
They'll be great, but it's nice for us. I don't feel like right now. Again, things could change. We don't have a Melvin Gordon. We don't have a Jerry Judy. We don't have any of these divas on the team right now. That also could be because we're probably not expected to do very good this year. And sometimes divas are the best players on their team for a good
Yeah,
reason. But
fair.
it's refreshing to have a core of guys here that they're not overly invested in their brand. They don't have like big distractions outside of football. And we've been so poor for so long that we're just done with it. Like we just want
Yeah,
to see we want to see guys be about their business, be about seeing this team do well and not
cool.
having any of the distractions here.
And that brings us to the draft. We'll talk about the
Yes.
draft, but I just want to say one thing. If you're listening to this and you don't understand why I'm talking trash against the Browns, I could not help you. Because if you haven't gotten it up to this point, okay, I will not say anything positive about anybody in the AFC North unless we're talking about Lamar Jackson. Everybody else is fair game. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I did want to throw this in there too. So Lewis Hamilton, the race car driver,
Oh, I saw that.
he's a part owner for the Broncos. I don't know if
Yeah,
you knew that.
I I didn't know that until yesterday.
Yeah, he came in with the new ownership group, and I think Condoleezza Rice is too. Strangely enough, yeah, they own a little bit of of the team, but they did our schedule reveal yesterday was Lewis Hamilton trying all these dishes that are specific to the cities of all of our opponents. And
Oh, did
so
he?
when he lifted the one up for Cleveland, it was just dog food. So he didn't even eat it.
Exactly. Exactly. Like that's what this is about. Like screw those guys. And by the way, my Bears person conversation was lovely. So I'm
I
just
can't
saying it.
wait
But
to watch that.
as a program, like I'm not gonna no. Like I said, Lamar Jackson, that's it. Not even the Ravens, just Lamar. So tell me about the draft. We mentioned a couple of things that I think Bo Nix helps with as
Yes.
far as like the quarterback style and what Sean Payton really likes historically can do well with. We've seen. And I'm assuming you guys are excited about him. If you're not, please correct me. But how do you feel like you did in the draft? Do you feel like you found some people that you are excited you're excited to see them? Or what were your thoughts on the draft?
Yes, I love it. It's hard not to love a draft, I guess, here in May, but I really loved. I just didn't feel like they like overthought this whole thing. And I think George Payton, he's been the GM here for a while now, and I think he's a better GM working with a head coach like Sean Payton to help Sean Payton bring forth his vision to the team rather
Okay.
than where George Payton has been in the past, bringing in his own head coach, such as Nathaniel Hackett, something like that, where he's been more so like setting the vision as a whole,
Got it.
if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes with these guys who have the scouting backgrounds, they tend to kind of reach for these guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, my scouting eye, I found this guy as a diamond in the rough. Some of
Yeah.
those picks we've had that haven't hit, I felt like have been massive reaches at different points throughout our last few drafts. But
Okay.
I think things have worked really well. Kind of like a yin and a yang counterbalance to Sean Payton, who has traditionally been super aggressive in drafts, whereas George Payton has liked to trade back or get as much ammo as he can. And then sometimes with some of those picks make like, what
I
kind of
I
picks?
like the draft back. I like the
Yeah.
trade back bang for your
Yes.
buck people.
Yes. Yes.
Those are my people.
That's how I traditionally like it as well, but we just haven't had a lot of picks to work with this year. So I like the fact that we were able to kind of wait and draft Bo Nix outside of somebody like Caleb Williams or Drake May, which I felt like were probably the two like best fits in terms of that top quarterback tier for what Sean Payton wants
For
to
the
do.
style. Okay.
Yeah, outside of that, it's kind of like outside of those two guys, and even Drake May had some issues with some of the quicker timing stuff. What's going to be the best fit for what Sean Payton wants to do? And I think, take away Caleb Williams, for instance, and I tell you like, hey, there's been a quarterback that threw for almost 80% completion percentage. Yes, he threw 30% of his stuff at or behind the line of scrimmage. But if you look at what he did from the line of scrimmage and beyond, he threw the routes that are so important to this offense
Yeah.
down the field between the numbers more than anybody else did in college football. Talking about a guy who seems like he's got all the right intangibles. He's a son of a coach. He started for his varsity football team in the eighth grade. So he's always been somebody that has led teams that have a bunch of
True.
guys that are way older than
Very
him,
true.
even
Yeah.
from his time at Auburn. And he's been through adversity. So he's overcome some, sucking. He's had to transfer. He's had to reinvent himself a little bit. He's been through a lot of it. And I think if you take away his name, if you take away the fact that he played at Auburn and you're looking at all the positives, really the only thing that you can, maybe the only couple things that you can pick out that's a negative is that he threw a lot of screens, which, by the way, Drew
I
Lock
don't think that's a
and
negative.
Russell Wilson could not throw the screen to save their
Yeah, I
life.
don't think that's a
That's a
negative.
staple in the Sean Payton offense to be able to
Mm-hmm.
throw those screens and throw the dump offs to the running back in a way in which it doesn't stunt their momentum, which we've seen so often. But also, he's 24, and I feel like those were kind of the biggest things going against him. I think that there's a narrative with Bo Nix, again, because he played at Auburn. It didn't look pretty all the time. Oregon, a lot of people don't like Oregon or whatnot, but I think when
there's that.
Again, you remove the name, you remove the schools, and you just look at like who this player is. It would not surprise me if he ends up being one of the 3 best quarterbacks in this class when it's all said.
Here's my thing about Bo Nix. I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree the narrative has taken a hold of Bo Nix. And because of that, he gets a lot. He's always going to get a tougher grade. He's always going to get a tougher critic. He's always going to whatever. I'm of the opinion that not everybody, I don't know if we'll see another Patrick Mahomes, because even CJ Stroud is not Patrick Mahomes. CJ is good because of what CJ can do, and Mahomes is good for. So I'm saying that to say, I think a lot of teams are going to have a lot of really amazing, talented QBs that might amount to a little bit better than average, but the team helps uplift them, because quite frankly, that's what Brock Purdy is. And they were in the Super Bowl. And then, you have your Lamar Jacksons and stuff like that. But it's like, I think Bo Nix is solid for what you need Bo Nix for. He's like, I don't think he would have done well in like Pittsburgh, because it's like, for a lot of reasons, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he's not for us, but he's perfect for Denver. And I think if his name was John Manning, everyone would be like, he's amazing. You know what I mean? He'd be like, he changed from Auburn because his grandpa told him to, or, they would make a narrative that was positive because of his name. So I do agree with you. I think he gets a lot of slack, but I think he's perfect for what Denver needs him to do.
Yes.
And he can get better. He's 24. He can improve. So anyways, I'm in agreement with you. At first I was like, I don't know about this, but I see where you're going with this, and I think it was good. And what better person to have than Sean Payton?
Yes. And again, the organizational commitment has been such an issue with the quarterbacks post Manning of like, when we drafted Paxton Lynch, I don't even think the Broncos interviewed him. And it was very clear that when Elway picked him, Gary Kubiak was not on the same page. So then you have the head coach that didn't even want him. Then you go to Drew Lock, and it was very similar. I don't think Vic Fangio wanted him, there either. And then we're switching coordinators on him every year. So it didn't help with his growth and development. This is really the first quarterback that we've brought in. I guess you could talk about Russ, but it was a little bit different of an issue where
and he's
Elway
matured.
was wanting to make one more swing.
Bo Nix has a unique opportunity here to come in and learn from a coach that matches his skill set. And that can probably teach him and tell him things that he may or may not hear anywhere else. And let's be real here. Not a lot of coaches that are still coaching have won Super Bowls.
No.
That's a plus. So.
And people want to act like Drew Brees was some sort of special quarterback. Like, the dude was like Ryan Tannehill.
Listen, I live, I gotcha. Like, being in Texas, I know all about Drew Brees. And so, I agree. Like, anyway, so listen, enough about Bo Nix, because I actually don't mind Oregon though. So here's the thing. I don't think people mind Oregon as a school, because we all like to see their uniforms. We all like to see what they got. I think it's Dan Lanning that people have problems with.
I know. Yeah. He's just got that good old boy face, that punchable smile.
He does.
I think he is a different person than how he portrays himself to be sometimes,
but
he's a damn good football coach,
Can't take it away from him.
At the end of the day. And that's how, honestly, like, a lot of good football coaches, they're kind of assholes. Like, outside of maybe Mike McDaniel, who hasn't had much playoff success in the NFL yet, pretty much all the successful coaches they're known for being kind of
Douchey.
tyrants,
Yeah.
assholes, kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuck in their ways a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what you get. There's a smaller contingent of Broncos fans that are like, I'm excited for Bo Nix as long as Sean Payton doesn't ruin him. Excuse me, have you seen the coaches that we've brought in here over the last handful of years? Guys who Vance Joseph had no idea what he was doing here. Vic
Yeah,
Fangio had
no.
no interest in anything on the offensive side of the ball. And Nathaniel Hackett was the Michael Scott of the NFL. So you're saying that you're upset that we got a guy who actually has somewhat of a proven track record with offense, who has won a Super Bowl, but you're going to say he's not
Hope he
that
knows what
good
he's doing.
because he signed a Ryan Tannehill level Drew Brees and turned him into a Hall of Famer? Like because he yelled at Russell Wilson? Because he yelled at Russell Wilson on the sideline? Like, I would love to have Kyle Shanahan here. I would love to have Bill Belichick here. Well, if he was a little bit younger, right? All of these coaches outside of maybe Mike McCarthy that I can think of that have won Super Bowls, they're assholes. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of what you're going
I
to
don't
get in
know.
the NFL.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because then there's Mike Tomlin, and I don't know if I think Tomlin's an asshole. I don't think he is, but I don't think he takes anything. Like, I think
Nope.
he's very, it is what it is. But it's interesting because Mike Tomlin's one of those coaches that's like a player coach, and every player's like, he's so hard, he's so tough, he's so whatever. But I love that guy. I'd run through a
Yeah.
wall. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, so you kind of have to have a little bit of that to you.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about. I think
Yeah.
people want friendly and lovey, and no, this is football.
I'll tell you a story.
And I was going to say, and these are grown men. And
Yeah.
that's the difference between, that's why I struggle anytime somebody wants to call a college athlete trash and all that. I try to shy away from that because I'm not willing to do that. There's people that in the NFL that are trash because they're men. I can call them that. However, they have a chance to change my mind.
Yes.
They get to develop. It's fine. But that's just how I see it. I see NFL players as grown ass men, and they will be treated as such.
Yes. Yes. It's funny. I've seen some comments again with Sean Payton because, again, he is he is a rough personality sometimes.
Yes,
he is
yeah.
arrogant. He's so arrogant. I don't care about that. But I care that he has a track record. But I do think it's funny how I hear people say, I would never want my son to play for Sean Payton, yada, yada, yada. Give me a break. The Bounty Gate stuff, the whatever. But you see players like a John Franklin Myers legitimately take money off of his contract to come here. You see guys turning down other free agent deals to stay here with the Broncos or to come here because they want to play for Sean Payton. And it's so funny because I never saw anybody take a pay cut or turn down another deal to come to Denver to play for Nathaniel Hackett, who is literally giving players hugs before every practice and training camp while he was here. Yes. So that's why he was never respected. When you're giving players hugs at the start of every practice, and then you're having like a water balloon field day before you've ever accomplished anything, guys aren't gonna turn down extra money to come here when it's a clown show. And, yeah.
That's awesome. I also just want to say, I think that we as human beings do a terrible job at letting people's actions speak for what they think. For example, players that are deciding to come to your team, taking less money, they're willing to take chances on you. Similar with college, right? It's like if a player's willing to go to somewhere and take a chance, or if they're not willing to take a chance on certain things, like we don't pay attention to people's actions enough. They're telling us, we're just not paying attention to what they're saying. And so I hear you. I think I always laugh because I'm like, some teams, I'm like, they're never going to get a big time signee because first of all, they've never gotten one. Second of all, like, why would anybody want to go to some of these places? And I'm not going to call anybody out because this has been a nice journey of me to go and talk to all these different fans. So I'm not here to like crap on anybody's organization unless you're in the AFC North. But some of these teams, it's like, what have you shown that would make me want to be there? And the city is kind of blah. So it's like,
and you don't have an indoor practice facility?
Yeah, so it's just, that's like make me want to be there.
Yeah.
So what concerns do you have for heading into the season? I feel like you guys are like in a weird play. Like, I don't know if I would say that you're rebuilding, but in a way you're like rebuild light. Because you had a decent record. You won
Yeah.
probably more games than you thought, but I don't know. What do you think? Like, what do you
I go back and forth on this a lot, and I'm terrible at record predictions, all of
Yeah,
that.
I won't
And
ask you
to
that. Okay.
me, the record, there's a lot of scenarios in which I can see the season as a success,
Okay.
regardless of kind of how we finish. But I do try and look at, okay, like I try and look at the roster and say, where did we get worse and where did we get better? And you can say, okay, we lost Justin Simmons. That's big. But
Okay.
I legitimately feel like we've upgraded the wide receiver core with Josh Reynolds coming in here, still retaining Cortland Sutton. Hopefully he still stays here. Marvin Mims going into his second year, Troy Franklin here, and the running back room I feel like is better. Javonte Williams is now another year removed from the ACL. He's going into a contract year. I don't think we extend him. I could see Audric Estime, Blake Watson, a few of these other guys kind of being the guys to lead the backfield for years to come, which, by the way,
Okay.
Audric Estime was probably my favorite pick outside of Bo the Nix this year.
Nice.
Big tank of a running back. I really like him. But I try and look and see, like, okay, like, where
How do
did
we
we,
kind of
like, honestly get worse? Because I think we got better with our defensive line, with our front seven. The edge room is like average, but it's not
mm,
awful. The linebacker, inside linebacker is a little bit of a question mark, but it was a question mark last year. The offensive line, it's good offensive line. I'm not going to say it's elite, but it's good. So
okay.
um, if we have a better decision maker behind center, who's to say we can't win one more game than we won this past year? Like, but I could see a scenario in which Bo Nix is having a lot of the normal rookie ups and downs, and that's totally fine. But if you've made 61 college starts, my patience for you is going to be a little bit thinner compared to if you were like JJ McCarthy coming in starting week one. Honestly,
That's
I just
fair.
feel
Because
like,
yeah, because
yeah,
he hasn't had the same amount of football play.
yeah,
That's
because
interesting.
yeah, I mean, if you've made 61 college football starts, my expectation is that you're gonna be the week one starter. Like, if you're not ready, like he was calling protections, he was calling audibles, like Dan Lanning, they would give him, not Dan Lanning, but the offensive coordinator, they would give him two plays with in some of these situations, and he would check
Okay.
into uh, whatever play was the best based on the look that the defense gave him. So I think that he can handle maybe more than some other rookie quarterbacks could from a mental standpoint in his first year. But I don't know. I could see a scenario where we win 6 games again, something like that.
Yeah.
Or hey, things could just operate a little bit more smoothly. We're
Okay.
running more of the offense that Sean Payton wants to run. And, can we get some Jimmy Garoppolo quarterback play this year? And
Hmm.
if we get some, that type of play from what he's done throughout his career, if he's just kind of playing within the system, not, uh, playing outside of it
Yeah.
as much, can we see just a better product on the field to where we might be in there for that seventh wild card spot consideration down the end of the
Yeah.
stretch?
We'll
I
meet
don't
you
know.
there.
But yeah, right?
My Steelers will meet you there.
Right. But that's kind of how I see this is like,
Yeah.
maybe if the defense is playing better, again, it was his first year under Vance Joseph, last year as DC. We got a lot of continuity. So that
Okay.
is something that I think is going to serve the defense well. But I don't know. The biggest thing for me is I want to see the young players grow throughout the year. And regardless of the record, I just want to see Bo Nix get better as the year goes on. That's really the only thing I care about.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I think so many times we have these like expectations, where
Right.
it's like, okay, take a deep breath, like calm down, hold on a second. Like let's actually see how this is going to go.
Yeah.
So having said that, then the schedule has been released. So you're one of the last few that I will get to talk to that has seen the schedule release. What do you think about the schedule? Are there any games on there where you're thinking, okay, so let me circle this, or let me pay a little bit more attention, or this is a good litmus test? Obviously, you guys have the Chiefs in your division.
Yes.
But what do you see when you see the schedule?
Well, on
What do you see
paper,
when you see the schedule? What a question. What thoughts come to mind when you see
one
the
of my
schedule?
commenters brought this up. I forget what their name was, but I told you this off air, is that 12 of our 17 opponents were non-playoff teams this past year. So there definitely is a good chance to where if we win some of these games, we could be in there for a wild card spot. And
That's cool.
there's some interesting matchups. Like, take a look at week 15 against the Colts. I think that could have playoff implications. I'm probably a little bit higher on the Colts than some other people are, but I think Anthony Richardson's a good quarterback, and if
I
he
was
can
going to
stay
ask you
healthy,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
like I think that Steichen's a good coach, and yeah, I think the Steelers, they're always a good test to see where we stack up. Obviously, I love the fact that the NFL is like, yeah, let's make sure we have Russ's return here before he gets benched, making sure that happens. And, we'll just have to see. I think that will be fun from like a little rivalry
Yeah.
standpoint. But the Steelers, of course, they're always very well coached. They run the ball, which is something that we struggled at stopping last year, and they play good defense, and we struggled to put up points last year. So
We
it's
could be in for a doozy.
yeah, yeah. So Jets, they're another one that I'm looking forward to. We go to New York this year. Obviously, like, I'll talk a lot of crap about Russell Wilson, but the man I hate more than that is totally Nathaniel Hackett. I don't know how you could
Oh,
be a
right.
coach's son and just fail your way up the line like he has done. And it's no surprise that I've seen articles talking about how the Jets have tried to hire somebody over him in title to run the offense. And basically, it's just they're hoping that Aaron Rodgers is going to just fix the offense.
Like,
And
can
yeah,
you imagine a world in your job where you aren't very good at it? You just suck, quite frankly, compared to how others do the job, and you don't get fired. You actually get somebody that's going to allow you to keep your title, keep your pay. They'll just come in and be over you.
yeah, yeah.
What,
I,
like,
Again, when you're
it
Michael
sounds
Scott,
like
you don't have
dysfunction.
an issue with it,
Yeah,
and
it's so
you're just
weird.
there to hang out with Aaron Rodgers and be his best buddy again, and give him hugs after games, and
Oh
help him with
God.
his presidential run, and all that sort of
Did he
stuff.
really did he okay, so I'm going to admit a couple of things here. There's a couple of people on Twitter that I actually have muted. And I actually and during when season comes back up, I'll unmute Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers. He is definitely one of the people. I just have him muted because I think he's a total, I don't want to say nut job, but that's not fair. But I just think he's the type of person that I don't understand. So let me say
makes
that.
you wonder if he took any classes when he was at Cal. Makes you
Yes.
wonder.
So he did say that was real. That was actually he actually talked about running for president.
Well, he's considering. I think he said he was considering being the VP for Robert F. Kennedy. So, yeah.
Another
Yeah.
person that I
Yeah,
have muted
another
on my Twitter
yeah,
account.
I know. Yeah, this isn't a political,
Yeah,
sports
this
podcast, but
this is
is
not. But
anti-nut
come
job,
on,
that's
seriously, like,
my standards are low right now for
yeah.
where we're at politically, and, Aaron Rodgers doesn't even meet that. So,
That's a good. You know what? There we go. That's a good way to put it. Like, this isn't to tell you who you should vote for. This isn't a political anything. This is just to say I have standards, and that my standard, he's not in it. That's just
yeah.
how we're rolling. And if you like Aaron Rodgers and you want to support him, go vote for him. Yeah, I'm
Yep.
just not. So
Yeah,
that's where we're at.
I know it's sad, but it's looking like we might get another battery powered, 80-year plus old president, whoever that is, and I would still rather have that over Aaron Rodgers. So, but
Anyways, so Because I was going to say something else, and I was like, no, I need to let this whole thing go. So what else is there about your Broncos that you'll be watching for this year? Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on concerning the Broncos? And I just want to say I'm proud of us for our minimal Colorado talk. Kudos to us.
Yeah. Really, my expectations is I just want to see like just a well-coached football team.
Oh, are you talking about the Buffaloes?
No, I'm talking about my Broncos, but and the Buffaloes as well, where it's like
I could not take it. I'm sorry. I had to be petty.
We don't have, my Broncos. I would say maybe we got average talent. I guess it depends on the quarterback, but it's like we don't have the most talent in the league. We're not elite. But if we're well coached and we play disciplined football,
it helps.
We can overachieve. And when you got a coach like Sean Payton, he can elevate, those teams, and they can be well coached. So that's the defense. The run defense is going to be something to keep your eyes on. Now, you probably remember, why am I forgetting his name? You heard Jim Leonard brought up in a lot of college defensive coordinator jobs over this past offseason, including Colorado, some other schools like that. A bright defensive mind that a lot of people are very high on. He's actually this year the Broncos secondary coach. So,
I didn't realize that,
which is very interesting. He also played a year in Denver here a while back.
Okay.
Near the end of his career, but he's the secondary coach this year, and I think he's the man in waiting to run the defense if Vance Joseph isn't up to snuff this year as DC. So I could see him totally getting elevated after this year, depending on what the defensive performance is, which I think is really interesting. And another thing is, keep an eye on Davis Webb. You might remember him from his time at Cal. He was a Colorado commit throughout high school until he ended up flipping to Cal, playing in the NFL for a little bit, but has gotten into coaching over the last few years. From how some people in the media talk about him, beat writers saying they've already said that he's a future head coach. Okay. So this might be a position to where, depending on how Bo Nix performs this year, where you might see him elevated to being that offensive coordinator under Sean Payton eventually, depending on like what happens with, I forget, Joe Lombardi or Pete Carmichael. The whole New Orleans Saints staff, offensive staff, is basically here now, which is great. But he's another guy to keep an eye on from a staff perspective, of somebody who might elevate himself within the organization or might get an opportunity on another team to eventually become a head coach down the line. But he's somebody that a lot of people seem to be very high on, that are professionally covering the Broncos in the NFL, which I think is interesting.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. I appreciate hearing about a team, another AFC team. I think it's interesting to like, because you kind of watch football like for your division, and then you like zoom out and you see who's in the AFC, and then you kind of zoom out again and you're like, okay, who's in the NFC? How do they shape up compared to the AFC? So I just appreciate anytime I can get like more knowledge about any team in the AFC. I always say my home setup is legit, and I watch so much football on Sunday, and I've almost timed it where I can see everything happening, because I can have multiple screens on one screen, and then I have red zone. So it's like I have a whole system. So I actually watch a ton of football on Sundays. And I love it. And really on Saturdays too, but I feel like there's so many teams in college, so it's kind of different. So I just appreciate you like being willing to talk to me about the Broncos and just sharing out your knowledge, because we're fans. We want our teams to win. But we also realize what we're up against, and we realize that it doesn't always happen like that. And there's so many other factors that go into this, but at least sounds like feeling good about coaching, feeling good about what the direction you're headed. And you don't have as many question marks as some people that I've talked to, where they're kind of like, we'll see about this. We'll see about that. We'll see about that too. We don't really know about this either. So that's awesome. And you know what? Sean Payton is like an interesting guy. I've never been a fan of his, but I've never not liked him. He's just
Yeah.
always just kind of been a coach. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, let's see what he does, you know? Like I don't ever mind somebody making me a fan of them. Like that's fine. I'll be a fan if you make me a
Yeah.
fan, you know?
You want to know what's interesting? I forgot to share this about Sean Payton, which again, I don't think this happens very often right now in the NFL, but um, right now there's only one player on the team that makes more money than he does, and that's pretty rare
Oh, that's
in the
interesting.
NFL.
Who is the
It's
player?
Garrett Bowles, our left tackle, makes $20 million. I think
As he
Sean Payton
should.
makes somewhere around like 18, $19 million or so. So it's really funny about how like again, going back to Colorado, you know, Prime has always said, like, I don't want to coach guys that make more money than me and all
Yeah.
this stuff. It can still be done to where, hey, if you're good at your job, you can still make more money than 90% of the guys that you're coaching in the NFL.
That's true.
Which I
So
think
you're
is
saying, okay,
kind of an
so
interesting
basically,
dynamic.
so breaking news, basically Coach Prime to the NFL.
Oh
We
man,
figured
well,
out a way.
seems like the Falcons fans won it.
Yeah, we
Which
have
is
figured out a way to get him there. We have solved the code. And because let's be real, you probably won't have to argue with your left tackle very much anyway, because he's, you know, his job is protection. And most of the time, offensive linemen protect, like that's who they are.
yeah.
Quarterback, he probably wouldn't care if they made more money than him because, you know, it's a quarterback.
Yeah.
But we figured it out, friends. Breaking news. Coach Prime can go coach in the NFL. If he wants to.
Yes, he can. And you know, he can bring his blank playbook with him and we'll see how it all works out. Man, I'm going to lose subscribers over that one.
Okay. Anyways, tell the people where they can find you, Dave.
Yeah, you can find me at David Talks Broncos for my NFL, my Broncos videos. And you can find me at David Talks Buffs. I try to just keep it football and Buffs related, but hey, if you know, Jay Norvell's going to talk again before the game, I'll do some funny trash talk videos before that. But I try and keep it just straight football related as much as I can. But football junkies, you'll enjoy David Talks Broncos probably a lot better.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I like all of it. I like it when you're like, here's the thing. We're a dynamic people. Like people are dynamic and they're going to do things that you're going to be like, whoa, that was weird. But then that's who you are. And so, and I've said this in a couple of comments, like, I just appreciate you just being who you are. I think too many times people try to be something. They're just trying to be something. Like you're just who you are. It just is what it is. And I appreciate that in people. I know what I'm going to get from you. I appreciate that. The people I don't know what I'm going to get scare me. I don't know what to do with that. So thank you for being you, and thank you for always being supportive of me. So
yes,
I just
we'll have to talk
you.
again. Definitely this summer. We got to do it. And again, I feel like we got a lot to bond over with football. And I really pray to God that you guys found a good quarterback, whether it is Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. But I got to be honest.
You think it's Justin Fields?
I love Justin Fields. He's at least tall, so you got to give it to him.
Okay. I just can't. I feel like every time you say something, I'm like, I think he's going to say it, and then you say it. And so I'm like, oh, here we are. Yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, they're men. So they'll figure it out. And I always say Mike Tomlin will do what he needs to do. And I'll just sit back and let him do whatever it is he feels he needs to do. So
yes. Arthur Smith is a world of an upgrade over Matt Canada.
Okay, now I'm triggered again.
Yeah.
Now,
sorry, I just had to say it.
Have you ever seen me go as hard at anybody on Twitter than I did at Matt Canada? I'm like, get rid of this guy now, right now, in the first, right now, right this second. Fire him, have him leave the sideline. We're done with him. Was that a Rooney
hire or a Tomlin hire?
So I think what happened. I think this goes back to Ben. I think I think we kept Ben too long because he's Ben Roethlisberger and because we were being respectful of him. And I
Yes.
think when you keep Ben too long, it didn't they should have pulled a Jordan Love and still drafted a guy to take Ben's spot. They did not.
Yes.
And so I think that set us back. And I think whenever certain things set you back and it's such a big thing as a quarterback, I think other things start to suffer. And I
Yes.
think the hire of Matt Canada was a suffrage hire because we didn't have a bigger plan anyway. And I think that we thought we don't have a quarterback. Let's run a simple offense. It has to work, right? Because our defense is incredible. I think that's what happened. And then we didn't have a quarterback, which let's be honest, if we had a decent quarterback, maybe Matt Canada wouldn't be as terrible. Probably would, but we don't really know because the quarterback play was so bad. So now you have terrible quarterback play, terrible offensive play calling. What do? So you fire everybody. You fire the coach, you get rid of the quarterbacks, and you bring in a new offensive coordinator, and you bring in two shiny new quarterbacks, and you say, I hope to God that that's the fix because it was terrible. It was
Yes.
terrible. So that's what I think happened. I think what happened goes back to them holding on to Ben too long and them being so respectful to Ben that they didn't draft anybody. And that was a Rooney decision because he came out and said, whatever Ben wants, we're going to keep Ben as long as Ben wants to be here, like whatever. So you can't come out and say that as an owner and then expect the head coach to do something, the head coach and the GM to do something opposite of that. They can't.
You know what? I'm sorry we're going long, but I gotta relate this back to some Broncos history, which I think is
Mm,
kind of interesting. So when Elway was the GM, Elway was great aside from the quarterback stuff. So when he
yeah.
had Manning, he could help put the right pieces around him, which was
Yeah.
great. But Elway was like some of these other figures that might come in and run certain football operations, not grinding as much as some of these other guys are. That's just how it is.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it was interesting when we got Manning, we drafted in the second round uh, John Elway's son, Jack, hit Jack Elway's roommate at Arizona State, which was Brock Osweiler. It was second round pick,
Oh,
quarterback.
Brock. Oh,
And
Brock.
you see, Brock, he won like 5 games for us that Super Bowl year in his contract year as the Broncos backup. And he was a guy, again, not the most talented, probably like a Jimmy G ceiling or whatever, but
Fair.
Gary Kubiak liked him. He bought into him. He fit the system just fine. And after Peyton Manning retired, we had this guy that had been in waiting for 4 years to just be
Oh,
that next
interesting.
bridge guy for us.
Okay.
But Elway didn't want to pay him $20 million. I think he offered him 16. And so that's when he went to the Texans without even visiting them. It was a bad fit with Bill O'Brien, all of that. But I really do think Brock Osweiler would have had a longer career had, whether it was on him taking less money or Elway just ponying up $4 million more than what
Yeah.
it's not even his money. We wouldn't have been going with our third string quarterback at the time, Trevor Siemian, and then Paxton Lynch. And so we had the
I
guy in waiting, but we did the same thing that the Steelers did. We said actually forget about it. Just start
yeah.
over. And yeah,
Just like
it's
and
been a long 8-9 years.
that's why as Steeler fans we're just like I always say, can it get worse? Yes, it can get worse, obviously. But at least we're moving in a direction. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
we actually have quarterbacks that we've seen do well at playing quarterback. Like that's kind of the bar we're at right now. We have
Yes.
that. And then
Yes.
we have an offensive coordinator that we've seen that he wasn't great as a head coach, but we've seen him be an offensive coordinator. So, and before that, I'm like, we've got what Matt Canada was. He brought that. I'll give him that. Like he didn't he brought what he was. Like he didn't try to hide it.
Yeah.
I just don't think that I think that we were just like, no, we can do this mediocre style. And as we're doing that, the entire AFC North is getting better, improving, right? Because we were the standard for so long. And then so again, it's like it was a huge lapse in judgment. And it is a huge reason why I always say leadership matters. And if your leadership is not, if you're in football, if your leadership gives a damn about somebody's feelings, you're probably not going to be as successful as you should. You
Yep.
cannot care about anybody's feelings when you are a football coach in any level in the National Football League. So head coach, assistant coach, position coach, scout, like feelings, throw them out the door. This is not about feelings. This is about winning games and putting the best product together. So anyways, that's just how I felt. And that's why I always say, like, I would love to talk to, somebody was like, if you could do like a Make-A-Wish thing. And I'm like, can we not make it like a Make-A-Wish thing? Cause usually like, it's like sad. And I'm like, if I could have any wish, my wish would be, I want to go talk to and sit with every NFL GM for a week, every single one of them. And I just want to watch and listen and learn and ask questions and understand how they see this. Because sometimes I'm sure you've done it too. You've sat at home and you're like, what the hell? Like, what are we doing? And it's like, but I want to understand what they see and why they think that was good when everybody else around is like, did you mean to? You didn't mean to do that, right? So it's like, but anyways, so we're just rambling. Let me end this because nobody wants to hear us ramble and talk about rambling stuff. But maybe one day we'll have a thing where we're just talking random stuff, and so we can figure it out. But thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you.
Me.
Of course.